And yes, we are the coalition, loud and proud, here again in the parish of Western Rhode Island, Chippendale. As many know, we do all sorts of fundraisers on both sides of the aisle. Rarely have I seen one as packed in an almost joyous manner as I've seen tonight for newly minted, freshly appointed, freshly elected head honcho, chief water buffalo, high exalted ruler, just kidding, of your General Assembly Minority House Republican Caucus. First of all, my congratulations on the event. I mean, it was packed.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
And a lot of people drove a long way here to celebrate. And it's interesting. Politics is filled with transitions.
Sure.
And there was a wonderful minority leader, Blake Filippi, who served for a number of years valiantly. He's made a decision to move on, and you've assumed that title. It's different people bring different styles,
Sure.
different emphasis, different focus. So if we could, for just a couple minutes, tell me about what you're going to prioritize, what you find important, what role, what type of approach you take. You're well known for being very collegial. You've got a lot of friends on both sides of the aisle. You had a demonstrated capacity to work with people. So kind of mix that in a little bit to what your plan is in the next coming session.
Sure. I think the collegiality, as you said, that I enjoy with my colleagues, both on the Republican and the Democratic side, is due largely in part because I like to consider myself just a regular guy. I have a lot of business experience that I had really compelled me into politics. Dealing with the Rhode Island economic environment and the business climate was something that was extremely challenging. And so, I threw my hat in the ring in 2010. Here I am. The priorities that I have are right now, certainly as we go into this next year, the towns, the municipalities in the state are being clobbered with unfunded mandates by the state constantly. We've seen this ad nauseum for decades, but it's at the point now where we're relegating responsibilities onto the towns that they don't have the funding to do, particularly the towns that I represent, which are western towns, small towns. We rely a lot on volunteerism. We can't do everything the state wants us to do without some sort of support. That same dynamic applies in the business world as well. We create regulations every year by the hundreds in the General Assembly. We assign them to various departments in the state, whether it's DOT, DOH, DEM, DBR, DLT, all of the alphabet soup agencies. We put more and more regulations and policies that they need to enforce onto the citizens and the businesses of this state, but we don't prepare the businesses to be able to react for it. Oftentimes there's even a lack of understanding or knowledge of laws that have passed that impact certain businesses. So it's gotten to the point now, and I think we can spout the national statistics of we're 45th, in the nation for the worst business climate and all that. We've pretty much been at the bottom of the barrel all along the way anyway. What can we do to change that? We need to go back to the basics. We need to let businesses do what businesses do best, which is create prosperity. They create jobs. They create profit, which is a dirty word for a lot of my colleagues, and it shouldn't be. We are a capitalist nation. God bless America for that. And people who decide one day to put their livelihoods, their fortunes, and their reputations on the line to create a business that will contribute to society. It will hire people. It will feed people's families. It will allow people to grow. To torture those people with regulations has gotten to the point where fewer and fewer people, and we've seen this in COVID especially, where people have shut down their businesses, fewer and fewer people want to get into business in Rhode Island. I had an accountant once tell me that, in his opinion, if he was working on some retirement stuff with me, his opinion was if I urge you to retire in Rhode Island, I am engaging in malpractice because this is not the state to retire in. And at the point where I am in my life, I hope not to be retiring anytime soon, but people are retiring right now, and they find themselves trapped in Rhode Island because you can't get out. Mm-hmm. You're getting taxed on your pensions, no matter where your pension's coming from, even if it's just Social Security. But people who have tried to accumulate some form of prosperity or wealth, And again, that's become a dirty word, and it shouldn't be a dirty word. We should be able to work our tails off, create a comfortable living for ourselves and our families, whether it's through business or through being an employee at a business, and enjoy retiring in the beautiful state of Rhode Island, because it really is the most beautiful state in the country. And unfortunately, people don't feel that they can do that anymore. And that's really been the toughest part in at least the last 6 years, but certainly the entire time I've been in the General Assembly, is hearing from people who just say, I can't afford to live here anymore. So I think we really need to focus on supporting our towns when we put mandates on them, funding those mandates or repealing them, period. And the same thing with businesses, the same thing with DEM, with all of the alphabet soup agencies. We give them more and more work to do every year, but we don't give them any resources with which to do it. I mention DEM a lot because I think it's one of the most important regulatory agencies we have in the state. Their job is tremendously important. They're in charge of our environment. They're in charge of everything in our state that we really count on. Our water supply is very much under their umbrella. Without a robust DEM that's able to do the job that they need to do, that we compel them to do through legislation, the state is going to continue to flounder. And that's what we're seeing. Developers can't develop because DEM is so backlogged with applications on wetland permits or this permit or that permit. People who are trying to get professional licensure can't. We've seen, obviously with COVID, we've seen a lot of loss of employees through every sector. It's not unique to one sector, but where it's particularly been impactful, obviously, is healthcare. There was a lot of burnout. There was a lot of folks who transitioned into ancillary industries. And a lot of the knowledge base that we had in that industry has gone. I can tell you firsthand, the state of healthcare in the state is in dire straits right now. People who need important care are not able to get it. It's beyond just the monetary aspect of it. It's the availability of clinicians. It's the availability of specialists. This is all because we love to regulate in the state of Rhode Island, and we regulate people out of existence. That is where I think we need to be focused most. We need to get out of the way and let people prosper. Let the business people do what they know how to do, which is create prosperity, create wealth, which does trickle down, whether people want to hear it or not. It does trickle down. It helps people get out of whatever station they find themselves in. If they're ambitious enough, they can start their own business, or they can be a great employee in an existing business, and they can become whatever they want to become. Because again, God bless America, we're a capitalist nation. We should be able to do these things, but unfortunately, in the state of Rhode Island, we like to throw roadblocks down, and we believe we're the solution to everyone's problems, when in fact we are the root of all the problems.
The state of Rhode Island over the last 30 years has lurched from crises to crises to crises. A couple of us were telling a story to some young pup about years back when probably 8-10 years ago, when the great floods hit Cranston.
Oh, yeah.
And Senator Jack Reed, to his credit, managed to finagle with the Internal Revenue Service, I believe it was a 3-month extension on tax returns, at which point the state government had a collective nervous breakdown, because that meant that state tax returns were also going to get pushed out, and they actually had to go to short-term borrowing markets to raise money to keep, well, the state afloat. Now, and there always seems to be some bailout. You go back to the tobacco lawsuit, and we're one of the worst states in the nation, and actually using the tobacco lawsuit for preventing the use of tobacco. In your opinion,
yes,
has this overwhelming infusion of ARPA funds created an artificial sense of security in state government? And are we facing crises 2 to 3 years down the line when we can no longer fund the programs that this is supporting right now?
Without question. There's absolutely no question. When you look at our $13.6 billion budget and the jump that it made, which largely is attributable to this trough of money that came into us, it allowed us to spend this kind of money and still put a lot in reserves. We've created programs, we've funded programs. These things will need to be funded in perpetuity, and when this ARPA, or this, as my colleagues mischaracterize it, this free federal money dries up, we're going to have to fund it in perpetuity. These programs, these expenditures, these grandiose ideals of heat pumps and everybody becoming completely electrified by 2030. These are unrealistic goals that are bankrupting households across this state. Just to keep up with where we are today, the new utility company of Rhode Island, the Rhode Island Energy,
whatever they're called this month,
whatever they call this month, has already told us we're going to be seeing between a 40 and 50% increase. And that's not profit for them. That's because we're compelling them to buy a more expensive product because it makes us feel good about climate issues. And I don't agree with that approach. I agree that we have to be good stewards of the environment. I am an environmentalist. I'm a Teddy Roosevelt Republican. I am all about the environment. However, we have to be smart about it, and we can't bankrupt Ma and Pa over the winter when they're freezing and can't afford to put oil in their tank because we hate, and I'll quote one of my colleagues, we hate big oil and we want them to die. So we're going to unfortunately inflict pain on the people of the state. No. That's not where we should be going. We should be focused on helping people get out of where we are. We should be focused on fixing the pension fund that we so insidiously changed in 2011 with the best of intentions under Treasurer Raimondo, but never really properly saw it through. And now we have pensioners who haven't seen any sort of an increase after they were slashed, depending on where they were, haven't seen any sort of an increase worth anything, but yet we're squandering this money away on heat pumps and these pie-in-the-sky programs that are going to make us feel good about being the first in the nation to be 100% electrified by 2033, or whatever false benchmark that my colleagues put out there. That's not what we need to be focusing on. We need to shore up the foundation. It's a tired analogy, but if your house is built on a poor foundation, it's still going to crumble. You can put as many floors as you want on the top. You can put marble counters in it. You can put the best hardware in it. It's still going to crumble if the foundation is shoddy. We have a shoddy foundation. We need to shore that up, take care of the groceries, which are the people who have retired in the state and the people who work in the state and the businesses, and then everything else will work its way through. It'll become a self-funding and a self-replicating system. Or go back to that, because we were, frankly, in Rhode Island for a great number of years, the manufacturing hub of America. There's no reason why we can't be another giant in some sort of a business sense in the state if the state just got the heck out of the way of the people who know how to run businesses.
There was a moment to your point about programs. The governor, if you will, floated a real trial balloon on what became an electric vehicle tax credit. And they had at a wonderful organization called Capital Good, who does a lot of microloans, great organization. They had it at there because they have a charging facility. And we found ourselves on Smith Street in La Prave, which is a challenged area economically. Wonderful people, a lot of very hardworking people working 2 and 3 jobs. But let's be blunt, it's a below middle income neighborhood, and in some cases a very poor neighborhood. And so we had folks touting the notion of electric cars. And people know I used to work in the car business, right? I did a payment calculation, because that's what car salesmen do. And I projected to the governor based on a $27,000 purchase price after their credits, based on, if you will, just the average carrying cost of a car loan, about a $550 a month payment. Sure. And I asked them, was there anybody within 3 miles of this neighborhood, until you got to the east side, who could afford even a $550 a month rent payment? Never mind an automobile. And there was this sort of stunned silence. And they said, well, we have to do, and this seems to be the response. Mount Allen, the great show host on WPRO, likes to say, well, we have to do something. Yep. And so their idea of something was to say, well, how are cars, what are we going to do? We have to do something for the environment. I said, well, understand too, how is the energy for these found? Through electricity. Okay, and what principally powers electricity? Well, we know it's carbon now, but the technology will get better. And I said, there's simply no there. There is no and just basically, step by step, as a member of the working media, I found it my responsibility to ask them questions which lead to a logical conclusion. Now, we all thought that was dead. A couple months later, guess what we got now? $25 million, right? And the issue being is that it's, in my humble opinion, I'm going on and on here, but I want your reaction to this before we kind of wrap it up. In my humble opinion, this was a tax credit geared to upper middle income individuals who, by the way, you need a credit card, by the way, to charge these, and a significant number of those folks in that community, through the challenges of life, aren't even banked, as they say. So at what point in time, how do we reinfuse the DNA of Rhode Island government with just a bit of common sense? How does that happen?
I think it always takes an extreme situation to sort of course correct old habits. And this old habit has been an old habit for a very long time. Mm-hmm. It's political pandering. It's obviously climate is very important to a loud segment of our society right now. Mm-hmm. And that loud segment of society is getting a lot of the attention of the policymakers. We've seen that from the governor on down through the legislature. And again, while it's a laudable goal and it's something we need to be focused on, you just hit the nail on the head. We cannot afford people who are simply just trying to pay the rent, make sure they have whatever medications it is they need, and keep food in the pantry to go on out and buy an electric car. I think that the most prime example of the ignorance, and I will be so bold to use that word, of my Democratic colleagues came this year during the budget debate when we as a state cut money from the LIHEAP program, which is a low-income heating energy assistance program. Poor folks across the state, and yes, we have them out here in Western Rhode Island, my Democratic colleagues, who need to keep themselves alive and heat their homes in the winter, have funds available to them through the state where they can get their oil tank filled or their gas or whatever it is that they're using. And we saw a good trough of money being put into a future program for heat pumps, which again, I have nothing against heat pumps. They're a wonderful technology, but they're a nice to have technology. We have people this winter who we know, based on oil prices and gas prices, will not be able to afford to heat their homes. Mm-hmm. And the Republicans sought to put $7.6 million out of this ridiculous pie-in-the-sky heat pump program into LIHEAP for this winter because we know people will be freezing. And my colleagues simply said, no, we're transitioning away from fossil fuels and they have to pretty much suck it up. That is, to me, the pinnacle of ignorance. And if they put their piousness and their altruism and their love of saving the planet above saving Mr. and Mrs. Smith who are going to freeze this year because they live on Social Security, then I dare say that their priorities are completely screwed up and they have no job making policy in the state of Rhode Island.
You actually took away my final question was going to be, Rhode Islanders are facing, and anyone who's had oil heat, I used to have oil heat, I went propane, anyone who's ever had oil heat knows that there's a 100-gallon minimum.
Yep.
And everyone who's ever run out of oil knows how to go to the Shell station and pay way too much for diesel and prime their thing.
Absolutely.
I am predicting lines of individuals with yellow gas tanks, yellow diesel tanks at their gas stations. And we are only a few, really, depending on the weather, we are only 3 or 4 months away from people having to come up with $500 cash, and if that's in order to heat their homes to get 100 gallons.
Heat at 60 just to keep the pipes from freezing and wearing 3 blankets at night. And yeah, absolutely. Right. That's the stark reality, Pat, of where we are. It's a reality I grew up with as a child in a very low income family. Plenty of cold showers and cold baths in my older siblings' bath water and all that stuff. Like you make it work, right? But when we're dealing with folks who are on a fixed income, maybe it's just Social Security, maybe they get a military pension on top of it. They have to buy the insulin, they have to buy the food, they have to pay the rent or the taxes, and now they're looking at $1,000 to fill up their oil tank. It's just not feasible for these folks. And to tell them, well, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I know it's cold out, but you just need to go buy a Prius, or you need to go buy what are they?
You can sleep in the Prius at night and run the heat.
A Tesla, I'm sorry, it slipped my mind, a Tesla.
You and I aren't Tesla people.
No, we're not Tesla people. I'm driving a 20-year-old car. I mean, and I plan to get hopefully a few more years out of it. Right. It's just, I can't afford to buy a brand new car. And if I could, it wouldn't be a Tesla because I can't afford to upgrade my electric in my house, which would need another 75 amps for the charging station for the Tesla. Mm-hmm. And plus I live on the end of a trunk line, so the utility lines will be melting off the poles if me and my neighbors all got electric cars. Right. It's just not feasible. We're not at a point, we will be someday, I'm certain of that. We're not there now. Right. And my colleagues just want to be, hey, we're the first offshore wind farm. All right, that's awesome. That's really cool. Hey, we're going to be the first state 100% renewable. That sounds cool, but in practice, people will die. I'm not being melodramatic. That is the truth. And my naive colleagues on the other side don't see it. And it hurts my heart that they don't. But I'll be damned if I stay silent during this transition to renewables without making sure we take care of the people who need to be taken care of first.
Mike Chippendale, thank you so very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I know it's been a full and rewarding day for you. Congratulations again. Folks will know that if I visited a fundraiser, and I always make sure that I keep the camera away from folks, let them maintain their privacy, but they'll know that if I don't discuss attendance, it wasn't good. Again, you pack the room. If this is your beginning of the tour of the Rhode Island continent, the tour is off to a pretty damn good start. So congratulations. Okay. And as we say to actually all the legislators, left or right of center, if you've got issues you want raised, if you want to have conversations here in Wonk Heaven at the Coalition, just give us a call.
Will do. Thank you very much, Pat.
God bless, lad.